Hey, good morning. It's about 6:15 in the morning, and we're out in the garage working on this thing still. Today I'm going to try and figure out why I don't have spark. Seems to crank over, but no spark. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and remove the distributor, and then I'm going to see if I can film it while I crank it and see if that thing is spinning around. Okay, let's go ahead. I've already got these tabs off. Just gonna go ahead and take those off. Lay this aside. And I think if I turn this over now, I should be able to see it spinning around. Okay, so if you just watch that, it's moving. It doesn't look like it's moving very fast, but I don't know how fast it's supposed to move. So it's probably based on RPM, whatever. But yeah, on to the next troubleshooting step. Okay, so next thing is I just switched this coil, this wire that I had on the negative side over to the positive side. And I really hope it doesn't toast anything. Alright, next thing that I'm gonna do is I realized I didn't have the Dizzy grounded. So I just threw this wire together and it's attached to this little screw here, and it runs around, and then I just threw it up here to the block ground. Alright, so we're gonna try that, and then I'll use my phone to record and see if I see little flashes here. I might kill the lights for this one to make it a little easier to notice filming. Alright, let's give it another crank. Still no spark. Yay. Yeah, the next thing I'm gonna look at on the wiring diagram shows there's a black and white wire that runs from the starter, runs from the harness to the starter, and then starter to the resistor, or the coil. So I'm gonna try, see if I can add an extra wire in that's a black and white extension that does the same thing, and see if that's my issue. I wish I was savvy enough to use a multimeter somehow figure this out, but I'm just not. So maybe one day we'll figure it out. And I was also realizing I found this cable. So this wire was actually hooked up to the original distributor that I pulled off, which was a high DUI unit, whatever. And so this was actually, I think this was hooked up directly to somewhere on the fuse panel and ran out directly to the distributor. So I'm also going to double check that. Maybe they ran that because there's something going on inside the harness that I don't know. So I'll check that too. Okay, so I hooked up the ground from there to there. Didn't do anything. And then I just ran a line from the starter off the black and white over to the coil. And when I go to touch these now, it tries to start, which didn't happen before. And obviously my key's off, so I don't know what that means. Maybe this needs to go to the positive side of the coil. It's like not that clear to me. Okay, so I moved this wire, which is my black and white wire, from the starter over, and now let's see what happens if I touch these. Okay, nothing. That's good, I think. Nothing sizzling. Alright, let's go try the starter and see if anything else happens. Accessory on, no sizzle. On, no sizzles. No smoke. Good sign. Now we watch the video back and see if we got any spark. Okay, so I've got my ground hooked back up on the distributor back here. Again, these are all pretty janky temporary connections. So let's see what's gonna happen if I touch these two. Okay, nothing, so that's good. All right, let me hook those up. All right, let's hook. Dang it. All right, we're filming up top. Try and see if we get a spark. I'm gonna turn the lights off again just to see if it makes it a little easier to see. I can also watch here, I think. Okay, if you just watched all that, you saw that we didn't have a spark again. So, I don't know what to do. This is so frustrating. I guess the next thing I can do is test the coil. I found some steps last night from Pinhead and I Hate Mud to test the coil. So let me pull those up and let's try that. Okay, I'm not sure if this means anything, but I just went to go move my coil and it's pretty warm to the touch. Like I wouldn't want to keep my hand on there too much longer. It's warm, quite warm. I guess that's a good thing. It means it's getting electricity, right? I just disconnected the wire that goes from here to the starter. So I'm wondering if maybe that's not helping, but I don't really know. All right, back to trying to test the coil. Okay, so the first step for diagnosing the coil was to remove all the wires from the dizzy and everything, and then run a direct connection from the positive to the positive side in the coil, and then leave your negative side off, which I have here, and then 1/48 of an inch is the coil wire here from the header, and then remove wires at plus and minus side of the coil, run a wire from the battery to the coil, and momentarily ground the coil negative lug. If you get a spark, then the coil is good. So here's our negative. Okay, got a spark. Did y'all see that? Okay, sparking. So that's good. Okay, so that checked out. Reconnect the original wire at the coil's positive side, turn the ignition on, and momentarily ground the negative side of the coil. Okay, so I've got the next part set up. You have the positive to the dizzy. You have the rest of the wiring system hooked up back to the car. Maybe this also needs to go back on, but it doesn't say to hook up a negative. So it says reconnect the original wire at the coil positive, which I did. Turn the ignition on and momentarily ground the negative side of the coil. If you get a spark, then the key on ignition wire and ballast resistor are good. I have an internal resistor, so there's no ballast resistor. Yeah, I guess we'll just turn it on, but I don't expect anything to happen because... Okay, there's on. Here's our negative side. So... yeah, nothing's happening. Which is what I kind of expected because... whoops, don't want that going anywhere. Because there's no other power source here, so maybe I need to hook up this coil wire from the harness. Let's try that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've hooked up the black and yellow wire to the negative side of the coil. I've also got my ground for the coil hanging out here. Key is off, turned it back off, so let's turn the key back on. And then let's grab our negative here and... oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's a good sign. Let's turn this off. All right, well that was positive. Then key on, ignition wire and balusters are good. If not, they're bad. Okay, well that's good. All right, let's diagnose the next step. All right, so I've got everything hooked back up the way it was. One thing I noticed though, so actually back up. The next step for checking the coil was to turn the key on, remove the distributor cap, and then manually ground the points. I have electronic points, so I don't know how to do that. So I'm just gonna leave the cap on. And the reason I am gonna leave the cap on is because I realized I was pushing gonna take the cap off, and these wires felt like they were kind of loose and not really quite attached to the cap very well. And I realized that, here, I could probably take one off here. I realized that this is kind of what was happening when I installed them. And the actual wire part wasn't actually being pushed into the distributor cap. So I was just pushing down on the rubber part and it was seating, and that was it. So I went around and I was able to push all of the wires down at least a 1/2 inch to 1 inch each. And I think now that I did that, they're actually making contact. Yeah, they're actually making contact now with what they're supposed to. So I'm gonna go ahead and crank this one more time and see if we get spark. And then I've also got my second filming station here punched in on the little thing there. So let's give this a whirl.